the animal, Colonel. You got it.
Wolverine is one of the most popular superheroes out there, and a lot of that credit can be given to Hugh Jackman for being the sole actor to portray the beloved Canadian. It doesn't hurt that his superpower kit is in the upper echelons of superpowers, with incredible healing and the coolest claws you'll ever see. However, what we have seen from Wolverine on the screen just scratches the surface of how powerful he is. Let's take a look at the top 15 most powerful versions of Wolverine.
You point me in the right direction, you get the hell out of my way.
Starting our list off at number 15 is Wolverine Noir. This story takes your generic private investigator, has them hold literal knives in between their fingers like a cosplayer, and then call themselves Wolverine. It's an interesting take on our beloved character that runs the Logan & Logan Detective Agency in 1937, and he is also known as the fiercest knife expert in New York. Still pretty cool, but the rest of this list would sweep the floor of Logan & Logan with Wolverine Noir. How can adamantium claws be an even hotter ability? Well, by heating them up, of course. Number 14 brings us Hot Claws Wolverine from the Return of Wolverine miniseries. In this series, it is established that when Wolverine becomes completely enraged, his claws would become red hot, making them even more terrifying to come across. Issue number 5 gave us more insight into that ability. Persephone leads on that the hot claws are a side effect of Wolverine being resurrected since his healing capabilities were overcharged in order for it to work. Now, that added energy causes his claws to essentially become little lightsabers, cauterizing anything they slice through. There is a downside, however, and that is while the claws are hot, his healing power is reduced. Number 13 gets major style points for having an awesome wardrobe that is only achievable with a crossover. Dark Claw is a merge of Batman and Wolverine, taking the best of both heroes to create a character that Batman's regular villains should be terrified of, especially since Wolverine definitely has no qualms about unaliving people. The story behind Dark Claw aligns with Batman's origin story but adds Wolverine's powers. Logan Wayne witnesses the murder of his parents, he enlists in the Weapon X program, gets a shiny new skeleton, and heads back to New Gotham City to avenge his parents. Coming in at number 12 is the OG Wolverine that has stood the test of time for nearly 50 years. While he may not be the strongest Wolverine, he has definitely won comic book fans over, has gone toe-to-toe with almost every single villain, and even most heroes, and originally told us that he is the best at what he does, even if what he does isn't very nice. I'm just really glad that the yellow outfit was left out of all screen adaptations, because that would have been painful on the eyes. It did make for a pretty awesome Easter egg though, when Cyclops quips back at Logan about their outfits in the first X-Men movie.
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
We've seen Wolverine on screen numerous times, but one of the best times for the 2017 movie Logan, which was inspired by the series Old Man Logan. If you haven't figured it out by now, Old Man Logan is taking the number 11 spot on this list. Wolverine, or Logan as he prefers to go by in the storyline, needs to be given his proper credit since we learn that after a very unfortunate incident involving Mysterio, he vowed to never pop his claws again. He ends up keeping that promise for 50 years. That level of restraint and willpower is as powerful as it gets, especially when you consider the world is ran by supervillains during the storyline. Now we are starting to get into our top 10 Wolverines, and number 10 really kicks things into high gear by giving us a Logan that is possessed by a demon exorcist style. Is there really much else you need to know? I guess you might want some backstory and justification. Fine, here it is. Nicknamed Hellverine, this possessed Logan kills a number of his friends while his actual soul is trapped in hell. This all started when the Red Right Hand, say that 5 times fast, summoned said demon to possess Wolverine. With Logan's soul in hell and Wolverine on a rampage against his friends, it takes literally all of the X-Men fighting the physical form of Hellverine, while Jean Grey and Logan's soul battle the demon internally to cast it out and send it back to where it came from. If Hellverine had survived for a longer stretch of comics, it may have climbed higher up on the list, but the small footprint is holding him back. Number 9 is Laura Kinney, who is the result of a secret program that was meant to replicate the creation of Wolverine. Since Wolverine is the only person that can survive the process of bonding adamantium to their skeleton, it was just decided that it would be easier to clone Wolverine himself. Out comes Laura Kinney, who is also called X-23. She was trained at birth to be an assassin and was to be controlled by a place called The Facility. Ooh, ominous. They also decided to give her a trigger scent that would cause her to go into an uncontrollable rage upon smelling it. Another interesting fact about Laura is that she only has 2 claws in each hand, but they are still just as deadly. Her healing factor is also off the charts compared to the Wolverine she was cloned from. When she escaped her handler, she cut off her own hand and then reattached it to her wrist like it was no big deal. Like her predecessor, her upbringing is riddled with darkness and unhappy moments, which makes her all the more terrifying when she decides to pop her claws, and if it happens under the influence of her trigger scent, there isn't anything stopping her. I can imagine that having all of the indestructible metal that is coating your entire skeleton ripped out of you through your pores would be quite an upsetting experience. For Feral Wolverine, our number 8 spot, it is enough to make him go, well, completely feral. You see, Magneto thought it would be fun to remove Wolverine's adamantium from his skeleton, but what Magneto didn't know was that the adamantium was actually preventing a secondary mutation from taking form within Wolverine. Once that adamantium was out of the way, the mutation was able to grab hold and turned Wolverine into the most animalistic version of himself. A completely unhinged Wolverine sounds like they would be pretty strong, but once you go unhinged, you tend to lose any sense of strategy. Going back to the Old Man Logan storyline for our number 7 spot, we get a really interesting continuation within the Venomverse. This alternate universe sees Old Man Logan captured by Archangel, who is seeking to punish Wolverine for what happened during his encounter with Mysterio. I'm not going to tell you what happened, just like I didn't earlier. You are just going to have to read it for yourself, okay? It's worth it. Anyway, they decide to unleash the venom-infected T-Rex on him. Yeah, I'm telling you, read Old Man Logan, which gobbles him up nice and easy. However, the symbiote examines Logan and finds him to be a more suitable host than the Tyrannosaurus Rex it currently inhabits, granting us, the comic nerds, a Venom Old Man Logan. The strength of Venom and Wolverine is nothing to trifle with, but unfortunately, Venom has some weaknesses of his own, so that hinders this concoction, but still powerful nonetheless. Coming in at number 6, we have Weapon Omega. Starting off as James Howlett on Earth 295, he is recruited by Magneto to join his part of the X-Men, and James joins the cause under the name Weapon X. He eventually finds himself in a romance with Jean Grey, but she ends up being captured by Sinister. After Magneto puts in zero effort to save her, Weapon X goes after her, and after a fight with Cyclops, he ends up losing his left hand. Don't fret, though, because even after slapping some shiny metal on the stump, he can still pop his claws. Ash from Evil Dead 2 would be proud. Anyway, at one point, a giant spaceship lands above Manhattan, and unfortunately for Weapon X and a squad of X-Men, that ship belonged to the Celestials, who wanted to judge the state of the planet. Like most alien life forms, we are nothing but a disappointment to them, and Weapon X offers himself up to the Celestials to basically prevent Earth from being destroyed. With Celestial technology, Weapon X becomes Weapon Omega. Weapon Omega has all the same powers as Wolverine, but we can add on being the heir of Apocalypse, teleportation, flying, psychic powers, and the ability to change his size and shape by controlling his molecules. He is eventually stopped by Jean Grey and goes back to being good old James Howlett. Number 5 is an obvious choice because this version of Wolverine belongs in the top 5 simply out of respect. It would be sacrilegious for him to land anywhere else. Hugh Jackman is the sole actor to portray Logan on the big screen, and while some of those movies could be, and probably should be, forgotten, looking at you, Origins, it will be extremely difficult to replace him. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. It's hard to believe that Hugh was a controversial casting when it was first announced, since fans deemed him too tall to be Wolverine. Also, he wasn't even the first choice, or the second. He was actually the third person to be offered the role. It seems like everything was stacked against him in the very beginning, and now everyone is sad to see him eventually go. Hugh approaches Wolverine with such an intensity that I can't say I'm surprised that the 54-year-old wants to hang up the claws. It has been known that prior to shirtless scenes, he will deprive himself of water for up to 36 hours to really make his muscles stand out. That is not doctor recommended and will definitely take a toll on your body. At the bare minimum, we can look forward to seeing him again in Deadpool 3, and we can cross our fingers and toes that he makes it into a big MCU film. Even if he doesn't, the best we as fans can hope for is some sort of passing of the torch, which is definitely possible given all the multiverses we are currently dealing with. That I would be able to accept. Number 4 is the blood-sucking vampire Wolverine. The What If series of comics has to be one of the most fun alternate universes out there. At one point in time, we have all asked an outrageous question that began with, what if? What if we all had duck feet instead of human feet? What if apples tasted like bananas? What if Wolverine was a vampire? Hey, we're onto something there. Issue number 24 of the What If series shows Wolverine being bitten by none other than Lord Dracula. Unfortunately for Dracula, no one makes Wolverine bleed his own blood. Dracula is quickly eliminated and Wolverine takes the mantle of Lord of the Vampires and goes on quite the feeding frenzy. He turns a bunch of other X-Men and they essentially take over New York, causing the government to quarantine the entire city. While a Wolverine with an unquenchable thirst is the stuff of nightmares, he does acquire the traditional vampire weaknesses, like a sunlight allergy and vulnerable to pesky wooden stakes. Wolverine's undead. He's undead. Zombie. Oh, sorry. You know how it goes. Number 3 is Zombie Wolverine, which is from another crazy series called Marvel Zombies, and it is everything you would hope for from a zombie comic. Now I know you may be asking yourself, wouldn't Wolverine's healing factor just defeat any zombie virus that would try to enter his body? And my response to you would be, some questions are better left unasked. Or I could give you the real answer and tell you that Zombie Hawkeye and Zombie Captain America both bit Wolverine and that overwhelmed his healing ability, but that would depend on my mood. A Wolverine without a fully functioning brain is a Wolverine with no humanity and nothing holding him back from his feral personality. The Silver Surfer even rips his arm off, and what was his reward for accomplishing that feat? Well, being eaten by Wolverine, of course. And Wolverine's reward for eating the Silver Surfer is cosmic powers. That's an unfair deal, Silver Surfer, but we should know better by now that ripping off appendages doesn't always bode well, especially if the target is Wolverine. The number 2 spot is reserved for a literal monstrosity. This type of breeding can only be cooked up in a mad science lab, and that is kind of where it took place. Weapon H is a combination of the Hulk and Wolverine, together, as one, a single entity. And he has a whole pool of abilities unique to him. Wolverine and the Hulk face off against one another often, since they are both bottling up unfiltered rage all the time, but the idea of them being one and the same sends shivers down my spine. It also makes me super excited. Let's face it, could you be any more unstoppable? If you still aren't convinced that Weapon H is one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine, then let's take a look at his abilities, shall we? First and foremost, unlike his Hulk counterpart, Weapon H can transition to his Hulk form at will, and that level of control can be incredibly strategic. Weapon H's real name is Clayton, and he has an extensive military training, which means even when he isn't turning into a giant claw-popping machine, he can still be dangerous in human form. This creation is also unique because he isn't as mindless as his Wolverine counterpart was designed to be. Wolverine, or Weapon X, was designed to be a mindless mutant that would do whatever Stryker told him. However, Weapon H was created to have the illusion of free will by Dr. Alba. The idea behind this was to make Weapon H feel like his decisions to unalive people were completely his own. There is still more to uncover about Weapon H, and if his catchphrase doesn't become, "I'm gonna smash ya, bub," then that's a real missed opportunity if you ask me. Well, as the old saying goes, we started from the bottom, and now we are here, the number 1 spot. We have covered some pretty powerful versions of Wolverine up until this point, but nothing can compare or even come close to the host of the Phoenix Force. Phoenix Wolverine. We meet this cosmic powerhouse at the end of the universe, where King Thor is searching for signs of life, and boy does he find it, and much more, when he bumps into Phoenix Wolverine. However, Logan hung up the Wolverine hat hundreds of thousands of years ago, and has decided it is time to let the universe die. Thor suggests the two of them save the heavens, and Logan strongly disagrees with that sentiment, telling Thor that he knows when to let things die, and the universe needs to end. It all ends with Logan sacrificing himself and granting the Phoenix Force to Thor's hammer, so he can defeat Doctor Doom. It's a beautiful ending for this arc of our beloved character. It takes a lot of reflection to know when to call it quits, even if you are calling it quits for the entire universe. Did you know that Wolverine was originally created to boost comic book sales in Canada? That's right. One of the most well-known superheroes was created as a cash grab, and boy did he do his job well. He's the best at what he does, and what he does is make Marvel stinkin' rich. Did your favorite Wolverine make this list? Let us know, and thanks for watching.